Our question reads, the strategy identifies corruption and foreign interference as key enablers that allow organized crime to operate, influence government decisions, and weaken sovereignty. What Pacific cases demonstrate how corruption enables TNOC, and what anti-corruption reforms have been attempted in other Pacific Island states that PNG could adopt? Now, the statement that corruption and foreign interference act as key enablers of organized crime can be clearly explained using evidence from the regional transnational organized crime description strategy. The strategy shows that organized criminal groups are able to exploit weak governance systems, influence decision-making, and undermine national sovereignty through these factors. Now, according to the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat 2023, the strategy emphasizes the need to strengthen anti-corruption measures and codes of conduct for officials, law enforcement agencies, and corporate entities, highlighting how corruption facilitates criminal activities. When officials are compromised, they may ignore or enable crimes such as money laundering and trafficking, reducing the effectiveness of law enforcement. The strategy further stresses strengthening anti-corruption legislation to detect, investigate, and prosecute TNOC associated or related corruption offenses, reinforcing that corruption is a central driver of organized crime. So the strategy points out that the gaps in legislation and inconsistent legal frameworks across the region, creating opportunities for organized crime and external interference. Criminal groups are described as being skilled at identifying loopholes in the laws and finding a path of least resistance. This demonstrates how foreign-based criminal networks can exploit differences between countries' legal systems to operate across borders, avoid prosecution, and maintain influence.
So to answer our question was broken, has two parts to it. So our first question, so what Pacific cases demonstrates how corruption enables transnational organized crimes, for example, fisheries, logging, or border control. So accordingly, the strategy highlights different cases of TNOC in the Pacific. So I'll be covering two cases in fisheries and logging. So the first case is fisheries on a regional level. As highlighted in the strategy, in the Pacific, illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, IUU, by foreign vessels in the region remains a major form of transnational organized crime, costing between 500 to 900 million Australian dollars annually. So affecting local communities, contributing to job losses and food insecurity. So the strategy highlights links between IUU fishings, corruption, labor exploitation, and human smuggling. Now, corruption enables this activity by allowing officials to issue fake or illegal licenses, ignore quota violations, and accept misreported catch data. So this reflects strategies warning that organized crime exploits weak regulatory systems and trust insiders to operate within legitimate sectors. So as a result, fisheries governance becomes a gateway for transnational organized crimes and foreign exploitation by weakening state sovereignty and economic security. So the second case is logging and corruption. So this aligns with the first case, and it's an environmental crime and corruption. So as noted by Walton and Dinen, 2016, the most visible connection between organized crime and between politicians is evident in logging. So especially in PNG and Solomon Islands, because the Melanesian region is a gateway to the Pacific, they have a long history of illegal logging. So mainly between Asian logging companies and local politicians. So we look at Rimbunan Hijau, a Malaysian logging company that operates across the Asia Pacific region. So in Papua New Guinea, it is also involved because we're involved in other businesses and retail and media. It's a diversion and a distraction from logging activities. So we look at Solomon Islands. So in the Solomon Islands, corruption in the logging sector is more visible. So political leaders, government officials, and logging companies, they often work closely together. So this has made difficult to tell the difference between legal and illegal logging because many senior politicians, they have direct interest in logging operations. So the strategy highlights, quote unquote, endemic corruption and complicity among officials. So in the logging sector, which allows illegal activities to persist. So this case to shows that logging is a strong example of how corruption enables transnational organized crime. So logging is not corrupt, but corruption enables transnational organized crimes through systems, actors, and impacts. So these cases, they demonstrate that logging reduces state capacity, it enables foreign interference and influence, it allows transnational organized crimes to operate through legitimate systems. So from the strategy, transnational organized crime strives where governance is weak, laws are outdated, and enforcement is compromised. Moving on to the second part, what anti-corruption reforms have been attempted in other Pacific Island states that PNG can adopt? So the strategy openly highlights strengthening anti-corruption measures and codes of conduct by improving legislative frameworks to prosecute corruptions linked to transnational organized crime. So the key idea is anti-corruption is essentially disrupting and dismantling organized crime networks. So across the Pacific, there's several states that have introduced anti-corruption reforms that Papua New Guinea could adopt or strengthen. So a key example is in the Solomon Islands. They passed the Anti-Corruption Act in 2018 and established the Independent Commission Against Corruption, the ICAC. So how this reform criminalizes bribery, abuse of office, misuse of public funds, while creating dedicated institutions to investigate and prevent corruption. Papua New Guinea can adopt Solomon Islands Anti-Corruption Act primarily because it was established before Papua New Guinea's Anti-Corruption Act. So Solomon Islands was established first. Because it was established first, Papua New Guinea could take note, since Papua New Guinea has established this in 2020. So same to Solomon Islands, we can also adopt from Fiji. They have strengthened accountability through Whistleblowers Protection Act 2017. Again, since they've established this 3 years prior to Papua New Guinea's in 2020, before us. So the measure is to measure strong enforcement agencies which encourage individuals to report corruption without the fear of retaliation. And again, in Samoa, another way we can adopt, Papua New Guinea can adopt, is through anti-corruption efforts that are supported through strong oversight institutions like the Ombudsman and Public Service Commission, which monitors leadership conduct and promote ethical governance in the public sector. So at the regional level, according to Walton 2023, they have created a new anti-corruption laws and organizations that signed international agreements held protests using media to expose corruption. So leaders in the region have also agreed to share these commitments, such as the TNY Vision 2021, which is a regional plan to address corruption. So out of all these reforms, they highlight very important points on strengthening effectiveness of Papua New Guinea's own ICAC, also improve whistleblowers protection laws and enhance transparency through access to informed information systems, reinforce in oversights institutions to reduce governance gaps. So overall, the Pacific experience shows that successful anti-corruption reforms depends not only on legislation, but through strong enforcement, institutional independence, and regional cooperation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Abigail and Lorraine. Tasola. Thank you, True. Sherimencha Bika Watemigo. We'll move on to the next group, Group 4. Group 4 will be represented by Emmanuel and Antonia. Please, Emmanuel and Antonia, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So me and Anthony will be presenting on behalf of Force. Our question is: the strategy explains that organized criminal groups often rely on trusted insiders and legitimate commercial networks to camouflage illegal activities and infiltrate supply chains. So, what cases in Pacific shows how insider networks of business front enable trafficking and more laundering into import economies like Fiji or small tourism economies, and how should PNG strengthen oversight of supply chains without damaging legitimate trade? So I will give a brief insight about the background statement, and Anthony will answer the question. So the strategy emphasized that organized criminal groups deliberately embed themselves within legitimate commercial networks by using trusted insiders. That these insiders provide access to trading systems and supply chains, which allow criminals to camouflage illegal activities within normal business operations, making it harder to detect, infiltrate international trade supply chains, including import, export, retail, wholesale, and shipping sectors, and disguise the true origin of illicit goods or traffic people, confusing border agencies and reducing the chances of interception. So in essence, the strategy highlights that organized crime thrives by blending into legitimate commerce, exploiting insiders to mask operations and move contraband seamlessly across borders. These tactics makes detection and disruption far more difficult, reinforcing the need for coordinated regional response. Now I leave the virtual microphone over to Anthony.
Okay, moving on to answering the question. What cases in the Pacific shows how insider networks or business fronts enable trafficking and money laundering, including port economies like Fiji or small tourism economies, and how should PNG strengthen oversight of supply chains without damaging legitimate trade? The first strategy to show is that organizations like the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime and the Asia Pacific Groups on Money Laundering warns PNG about money laundering and organized crimes. According to the Nationals 2021, money laundering is the movement of illicit drugs through what may appear to be legitimate third parties. An example of money laundering operations includes the establishment of bogus business such as travel agents, car hire companies, road contractors, or catering companies that act as secret agencies to channel public funds through dubious and, in most cases, hugely inflated contracts for the benefit of a corrupt network. Luma 2021 states that money laundering is a major threat to PNG, and such schemes can facilitate the movement of funds derived from criminal activities. Now, how should PNG strengthen oversight of supply chains without damaging legitimate trade? By building institutional capacity and collaborating by empowering independent commissions against corruption, where the establishment of institutions can work with other financial intelligence units, and it can enable to investigate criminals. The second one is a scenario where in 2023, a Chinese-born or Chinese citizen, Chinese-born businesswoman Melin was allegedly used a network of companies and tried to smuggle drugs. Um, yeah, this offer deal fronts for money movement, asset layering, and transport coordination through legitimate supply chains. Now, how should PNG strengthen oversight of supply chains without damaging legitimate trade is through enhancing international and regional cooperation by increasing joint patrols and information sharing with neighboring countries, particularly Australia and Indonesia, in order to secure national and territorial borders. Additionally, by strengthening regional cooperation, PNG can utilize training programs from international bodies to enhance the skills of border officers in identifying modern synthetic drugs. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony and Emmanuel. A very interesting presentation, similar to the first one by Abigail and Lorraine. Corruption, and then you have trusted insiders. I hope you people are taking note of all these things that we have discussed, especially the concepts and the use of trusted people planted within the system to facilitate illegal activities. We now move on to the next group. Group 5 is represented by Joe and Grace. We hand over the virtual microphone to Joe and Grace to share with us the answer to the assigned question. Grace and Joe, the virtual microphone is yours.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Group 5, me and Grace will be answering the question which was assigned to us, and we've divided the question into two, and I'll be answering the first part of it, and Grace will be answering the second part of it. So our question reads, the strategy calls for a whole of government and whole of society approach, arguing that law enforcement alone cannot solve TNOC because the problem is linked to social inequity and system weaknesses. However, Pacific states attempted multi-agency coordinations, police, customs, immigration, financial intelligence, health, and community actors, and what practical barriers make this approach difficult to implement in PNG. So the regional Transnational Organized Crime Disruption Strategy 2024 and 2028 was developed because Pacific Island leaders recognized that organized crime is becoming more complex and can no longer be addressed through policing alone. So the strategy explains that organized criminal groups exploit weak laws, corruption, poverty, unemployment, and limited government capacity across the region. So because of this, the Pacific Island states through the strategy are encouraged to adopt a whole of government and whole of society approach involving police, customs, immigration, financial intelligence agencies, NGOs, communities such as, and the private sector working together. The strategy specifically notes that most national responses in the Pacific remain law enforcement centric and argues that sustainable long-term responses must address system settings and social inequities, which allows organized crimes to grow. Okay, it highlights the need for stronger cooperation between government agencies and communities to reduce the social harms caused by transnational organized crimes. Across the Pacific, countries have already started strengthening regional coordination through initiatives such as the Pacific Transnational Crime Network, the Interpol's Project Blue Pacific, and the Pacific Policy Initiative. So these programs aim to improve intelligence sharing, regional policy incorporations, border security, and joint responses to crimes such as drug trafficking and transnational crimes in the Pacific. So with that, I'll pass the mic to Grace to answer the second part of the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joey. I'll be answering the question, what practical barriers make this approach difficult to implement in Papua New Guinea? So we'll be looking at PNG. When you see the idea of getting police or custom immigration. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So when we see the idea of getting police, custom, immigration, everyone working together, it does sound good. But let's come back to the reality in PNG. There are several practical problems that we face. I'll be presenting only 5. So in PNG, we have poor information sharing, or in other words, we can say communication skills. Poor communication skills. So our key challenge is the slow or ineffective sharing of information between agencies. This problem you can also see in small groups here in school. Communication is very poor in Papua New Guinea. So sometimes important information is seen as a minor and not passed quickly, which weakens coordination and response. So let's say an example. If a custom officer finds a suspicious shipping container, they may not quickly inform police or financial investigators. Because of this delay, authorities can miss the chance to track the money behind the crime or arrest the people involved. Secondly, we do not have enough resources, money, staff, and equipments. So many agencies, we don't have enough funding, and we don't have them available, and often it overburdens the staffs that are there already. So example I can give is my experience working with PNG Customs. So when I was in year 2, I worked in the post office as a PNG Customs worker. When I was working there, everything was run down. There was no computer there was only one computer to calculate duties, taxes, and fees. And there were no proper machines at all to scan illegal items, so we have to do it manually. And at the same time, there were not enough staff. So there were only 2 or 3 of us doing the checking. So this is the second reason. Third reason, corruption and lack of trust. Corruption can weaken cooperation, and agencies may not truly trust each other. Number 4, weak coordination. So there is no clear system. So there may be committees or task force, but they don't always meet or work effectively. For example, police, immigration, and customs may all be working on the same case, but separately because no one is clearly in charge. And lastly, the last problem is technology gaps. So many Papua New Guineans government agencies still rely on paper records or old computer systems instead of modern shared digital database. So this technology gap makes it hard for different agencies like police, customs, and immigration to work together quickly, even if they have plans to do so. Yes, so these are the main 5 problems that I have identified. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Grace, and thank you, Joe, for your presentation. We've read from Group 6, Group 4, Group 5, and now we'll conclude with Group 7. Group 7 will be represented by Cosmas. Cosmas, please go ahead.
Orang dah set level na kamu semester.
Cosmas, we're waiting for you. You can start the presentation.
Gigi. Orang. Sama bang. Mister, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead. Yes, you can start your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Yogiran and class. The statement question reads, the strategies promote intelligence, lead disruption through regional corruption platforms such as the Pacific Transnational Crime Network and the Pacific Transnational Crime Coordination Centers. How have Pacific Island states used regional intelligence sharing to support arrest, seizures, and or disruption operations? And what institutional reforms would PNG need to make intelligence sharing more effective at a national level? So we break down questions into two questions. Before I begin my presentation, I just define the transnational organized crime. According to Pacific Island Forum Secretariat 2024, transnational organized crime is a threat to regional security, and for too long, organized criminal groups have been able to remain ahead and out of reach of law enforcement in the regions. Examples of transnational crime include human trafficking, drug trafficking, and cyber crime, money smuggling, arms, and etc. So the regional transnational organized crime disruption strategies 2024 to 2028 was developed after through consultation process with members and relevant regional international agencies. It identifies priorities to help the region reduce the activities of transnational crime elements and their impact in the regional, according to the Pacific Islands Forum Secretary. So moving on to the first question that we divided the statement question into, how have Pacific Island states used regional intelligence sharing to support, arrest, seizures, or disruptions operations? Pacific Island states have used regional intelligence sharing through platforms like the Pacific Transnational Crime Network and the Pacific Transnational Crime Coordination Centers to seize or disrupt transnational crime operations. As mentioned in the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, law enforcement agencies across the region reported that organized crime groups have enriched in several Pacific Islands countries. Often, by sharing intelligence, countries have been able to identify these groups, track their movements, and coordinate response. The cooperation has led to significant sites of cocaine and methamphetamine shipments moving through the Pacific as well as the disruption of human trafficking operations. This question and the second question that was divided from the statement question is, what institutional reform would PNG need to take intelligence sharing more effective at a national level? From the reading, the institutional reform PNG should make more effective at a national level. Number one is adopting a formalized multi-agency all of government society approach at a national level. The other one is strengthen national, regional, and international partnership. And also improve data collection and management, and strengthen intelligence and information exchange, with also strengthening the legislative and policy arrangements. Therefore, moving on to the conclusion, the transnational organized crime poses a serious threat to public regional security because criminal groups operate across borders and often leakage law enforcement through legitimate businesses and trade networks. However, the Pacific Islands Forum Secretary's Regional Transnational Organized Crime Disruption Strategies 2024 to 2028 highlights that effective regional intelligence sharings, the Pacific Transnational Crime Coordination Centers can support arrest, seize, and the disruption of criminal operations. For PNG to strengthen these efforts nationally, it needs institutional reforms that promote a formal all-of-government approaches, improve partnership with the NGOs or the government policies, and enhance data collection, information and exchange, and strengthening legislatives and policy frameworks in the Papua New Guinea and inter-Pacific regions. Thank you, and that's all. That's the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Cosmos and Group 7, and I also thank the other groups, Group 6, 5, and 4 for presenting the answers to the question. So we'll conclude here, but I just want to leave you with an update. If you look at the picture that I sent, it's about the 3 containers of illegal imported frozen chicken that were seized and destroyed by PNG state agencies. And this one is in connection to what you said. Grace talked about having no structure, and Cosmos talked about the intelligence cooperation regionally, but domestically now we have some structure. We have some structure. NSA, the National Security Agency, which was created recently, has now created a joint intelligence group, a body where there are these different state agencies coming together and sharing intelligence, and that led to the seizure of the 3 containers of chicken smuggled in by transnational criminal syndicates. So slowly, we're building our intelligence capability, and the only way to fight transnational organized crime or TNOC is through intelligence, collecting information, sharing information from the community level, grassroots level, all the way up to the higher level. So it's through communication, as Grace has mentioned, us communicating, sharing information, and then analyzing this information and making sure we have patriotic Papua New Guineans who are working for customs, for biosecurity authority, for police and NIO and NSA and all these security agencies. We have people who are patriotic who can serve the country. So that's something for us to think about. And it's a new development that is happening, so things are changing quickly. So that's the structure that we have now. So that's all. Thank you everyone for sharing, and you all have a great day today, and we'll continue the discussion in our mural discussion forum.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Hello. Group 1 isn't the same period, Whitney and I.
Oh, okay. Oh, you online. Oh, all right, okay. Then you can go ahead. You can present it and we'll. Sorry for that. I thought you not in the meeting room. So. But Laurel, go ahead. You are pretty.
Screen share.
It's that button in between the microphone and the leave button.
The leave button.
And then
Okay.
then share that microphone. So if you click the share button, you see your screen appear.
Screen. Yeah, interesting. This one.
Can you see your screen? What is on the screen?
Screen, and there's two options: screen and window.
Yeah, that's the screen, and then you check if your PowerPoint is showing on that on one of the.
Okay.
All of us. Teams is I'm more fond of Zoom. I've been using Zoom for the past couple of years. So Teams
Is it
new, but
showing?
yes, it's showing. Thank you. We can see. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yagira. For group one, Laurel and I will be presenting. The statement and question reads, the strategy argues that the Pacific strategic geography and porous borders make the region vulnerable to transnational organized crimes, or TNOC, especially as both transit and destination points. Using PNG as your baseline, how have other Pacific Island states, example Fiji and Solomon Islands, responded to border and maritime vulnerabilities? And what lessons can PNG realistically adopt from the enforcement models? So I will be talking about the statement and the first part of the question, and Laurel will elaborate more on the second part of the question. A statement reads, the strategy argues that the Pacific strategic geography and porous borders make the region vulnerable to transnational organized crime, especially as both transit and destination points. So the transnational organized crime, or TNOC, has been long recognized as a significant security issue within the Pacific. The Regional Transnational Organized Crime Disruption Strategy 2024 to 2028 highlights the increasing and the threat of transnational crime across the Pacific region. According to the strategy, the Pacific strategic geographic location, vast maritime spaces, and porous borders make Pacific Island countries highly vulnerable to criminal networks such as drug trafficking, human smuggling, illegal fishing, and money laundering, and so on. So, using PNG as the baseline, how have other Pacific Island states responded to border and maritime vulnerabilities? So Papua New Guinea, due to its large population, weak border systems, extensive coastline, and proximity to Southeast Asian trafficking routes, is considered one of the most vulnerable countries in the Pacific. PNG faces major border and maritime security challenges because its geographical locations and limited enforcement capacity. Other Pacific Island states have developed different approaches to address similar vulnerabilities. For example, Fiji has strengthened its border and maritime enforcement through intelligence-led policing and tighter monitoring of ports and airports, which led to identifying high-risk entry points rather than attempting patrol all maritime areas equally. That's taken from Australian Strategic Policy Institute 2024. So the Solomon Island has relied heavily on international partnerships to strengthen security borders security and border enforcement through support from Australia under the Regional Assistance Mission to Solomon Islands, and more recently through cooperation with China. The country has improved policing capacity, maritime monitoring, and internal security operations, Reuters 2024. So PNG can learn from this experience by accepting technical assistance and training while ensuring that external partnerships focus on building long-term national capacity rather than creating dependency.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Now moving on to the second part of the question. We haven't included it in the slide, so I'll just be reading it. So to the second part of the question, what lessons can PNG realistically adopt from the enforcement models? Now the first step is, firstly, when these two cases are compared to PNG, several realistic lessons emerge, but they need to be understood within PNG's scale and constraints. So firstly, one of the most important lessons is that regional cooperation is not optional. So both Fiji and Solomon Islands demonstrate that maritime security in the Pacific is fundamentally collective. So PNG, with its much larger territory, cannot realistically patrol its waters alone. So deeper integration into regional surveillance and intelligence sharing system is essential. So this is one of the few areas where scaling up does not necessarily require proportionally large domestic investment. Secondly, the second lesson is concerns. The second lesson concerns the use of external partnerships. Now, Fiji shows that foreign assistance can significantly enhance enforcement capacity, but it also highlights the risks of dependency and external influence. So for PNG, the challenge is to accept technical and operational support while maintaining control over national priorities and avoid over-reliance on single partner. Given PNG's size and geopolitical importance, managing this balance is likely to be more complex than it is for smaller island states. So the and the last point is the need to move toward intelligent, and the last lesson is to move toward intelligent-led enforcement. Both Fiji and Solomon Islands still struggle with reactive policing, where authorities respond about trafficking as occurred rather than disrupting networks in advance. So for PNG, investing in intelligence systems, interagency coordination, and financial tracking would likely have a greater result than simply expanding patrols or increasing arrests. So this is particularly important because the TNOC in the Pacific often operates through networks that are fluid, transnational, and financially sophisticated. So PNG also cannot simply adopt a maritime focused model like the Solomon Islands because its vulnerabilities are not confined to the sea. The large border with Indonesia, along with internal transport routes, means that any effective strategy must integrate land, sea, and air border management. So this makes PNG's challenge structurally more complex, and it limits how directly it can replicate smaller island models. Now, to conclude our presentation, both Fiji and Solomon Islands underscore a deeper issue that PNG must confront. Enforcement capacity alone is not enough if government weakness persists. So corruption, weak judiciary systems, and the limited accountability mechanisms create openings for the TNOC to take root, regardless of how many petrol limited accountability mechanisms create. Yeah, TNC to take root, regardless of how many patrols, boats, or police units are deployed. So in that sense, institutional strengthening is not separate from border security. It is central to it. So in practical terms, the most realistic path for PNG is not to copy either model wholesale, but to combine elements of both. So that would mean relying on regional maritime cooperation in the way Solomon Islands does. So leveraging external partnerships as Fiji has done, and simultaneously building stronger domestic intelligence and governance systems, which remain the weakest link. So the broader lesson is that in the Pacific context, effective responses to TNOC are networked rather than purely national, and preventative rather than purely reactive. Thank you. And this, we have come to the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel and Brittany, and apologies for the oversight. I didn't see both of you enter the meeting room, and I was so keen on ending the session, but then you jumped in and told me that you're here to present. So apologies for that, but thank you for taking the time to share your answer with us. And going back to what I said earlier, PNG, now we have the Joint Intelligence Group formed by police and NIO, NSA, and customs, PNGDF. So they have the JIG. The JIG is now a group that is coordinating intelligence and then sharing with the different agencies to enforce, go ahead and use the information, the intelligence product to carry out their duties. So that's a new structure put in place through the creation of the National Security Agency. So this agency and the JIG, the Joint Intelligence Group, now they're getting information intelligence and then sharing. So I shared the post-Korea report, the 3 containers of chicken. So there's a lot of TNOC activities happening, not only in drug smuggling, but food smuggling, birds and fauna. Also, gold is now on the rise. Gold smuggling is on the rise in PNG. They've arrested 2 already, and JIG is now monitoring with aviation security. They're monitoring our port of entry and departure, our airports. They're watching and monitoring closely foreign nationals traveling to Hong Kong and Guangdong and other places. So there's a big change in our security system at the moment. So it's a timely presentation by all of you, and this is a brief update of what is happening. But thank you, everyone. We'll conclude here, and we'll have a wonderful day. We'll continue the conversation in our discussion forum. So I'm sorry to Group 1, but thank you, Laurel and Brittany, for presenting. Okay.